Hey y'all, Emily here from fairairmusic.com. Today we are mastering our mix that we did in the previous video, and I just wanted to go over a couple of things that I do, a couple of techniques, but this isn't going to be how I would master every session, but I'm just going to go over some things that I like to do. These are things that probably happen the majority of the time, and I'm just going to go over why I have them on there and what they do and how they can, really help and get your final master ready for commercial release. So the first thing that I always do is I put my meter plugin on there. I use the Isotope Insight 2. I just like it. It's super simple and it shows me everything that I need. So I increase the gain, the audio level of the mix. And I know there's a lot of talk about minus 14 LUFS and that you have to have that in order to have your song put on a digital streaming platform, because supposedly they turn it all down to that. Well, I don't know where that started. I can tell you this, I fell for that once and released a single at minus 14 LUFS, and you could not compare it to any of the major label releases. I don't know who started that, where that got started, but it has been circulating very deep within the audio community, and I learned my lesson once and I will not do that again. And I highly recommend not aiming for that. Now, pretty, stamped standard for CD release is minus 9 LUFS, and that I can get behind. That right there, I'm hearing a pretty good level, a competitive level, and so I'm not going to be mastering this at minus 9. If I was going to put it on CD, then I would have two different masters. I would have one for CD and one for a digital release. Now, with that being said, I won't go to minus 9, but I won't go as high as minus 14. So what's something that's pretty good in the middle? I would say between 11 and 12. 13 at the lowest, but I want to shoot for something around minus 12 LUFS. I think that's going to be pretty good. I don't think that any of the streaming platforms are going to compress that heavily. Make sure that you've got a track that's not really, really quiet in the beginning and then really, really loud, towards the end of it. You'll need to go in and kind of process that a little bit differently in those sections. But if you just got kind of a basic overall steady mix like this, where it just kind of elevates through, the song, but nothing, no extreme volume changes, then you're pretty good to go here. So I'm going to aim for around minus 12. Like that's going to sound good to me, and it's not going to get heavily compressed by any streaming platforms, but it's also going to sound competitive with major label releases. So, all right, next thing I want to do after increasing the volume, I want to listen to it first, right? Just listen to it, see what you think it needs, right? Make a list or something. What do you think it needs? For this one, I thought that it needed a little bit more, filling out of the lower end. And so that's what this does. That's what this precision enhancer, this is for the lower section of your frequency spectrum in the hertz. So this is automatically set to 256, your 256 hertz. And I just kind of pulled that up a little bit. This is at 20%. It just adds, just filling out a little bit more there. I do tend to use this about 70% of the time. I feel like there's just something that gets left out with the low end there when I get something to master. Now, usually probably don't do it too much if I'm mixing that myself. However, this song doesn't really have too much low end going on. And don't forget, we mix this with very limited Pro Tool stock plugins. So that's why that's on there. And one of my favorite things to put on my mix bus is this plugin right here. This is the Brainworx Digital V3. This is the Plugin Alliance version. I love this. This pretty much, I would say 95% of the time goes on my mix bus. And since I didn't get to use it in our mix, it's happening on the master chain. And what I'm doing here is pulling out some of that low mids right there, just kind of under 300, pulling out quite a bit on that. And let's see, boosting a little bit in the 1K area where that vocal sits. And then on the sides here, pulling out close to 400 and close to 500, and also boosting on the sides, the around 18K, just opens it up, makes it, flow a little better, brings a little air into there. We can also add some stereo width here. That might be nice if you didn't want to use a stereo widener plugin, which I do. We'll get to that just a little bit later. But also very important, this mono maker, man, that just cleans things up on the sides so nicely. And I've got that all the way up to 100 hertz, which means that everything below 100 on the sides, I'm basically cutting that out. And this plugin is just great. I love it. So the next thing that I've got here is just, I wanted to switch over to Ozone stuff. I really love the Ozone or Isotope Ozone products for mastering. That's where I use them most often. And I'm just cutting out around 500 here. And I've got, a pretty good Q on that, but that's fine. I'm just kind of just carving out an area that I felt like was getting just a little bit woolly and kind of covering up some of the things that I needed to poke through. The next thing we've got up is an exciter. Now, this song was a little dull. Again, the reason that there's probably a lot of plugins on here for mastering, and usually I'm just sticking this thing through Ozone and seeing what it does, but I wanted to add a little bit more excitement here, and I've just got 2 bands going, and just adding just a little bit, just adding some overall clarity. It just kind of opens things up a little bit, I believe. Now, this is something pretty unique to the Ozone line. This is a master Rebalance, and it's got 3 different focuses on here: vocals, bass, and drums. And so I thought maybe when I was turning everything up, that the vocals were just getting a little bit buried. And this right here is saves you so much time. I don't have to go back and remaster that, pull that up and tweak it. I can just pull up the vocals a little bit, and I know that says 2.1 dB, but it don't sound like it's that much higher. It just really kind of pulls it through a lot better. Very unique plugin, very cool plugin. Next up, we've got the Ozone Imager. I love this plugin. It will probably go on my mastering chain, I would say about 90% of the time. And we're not doing much because a little bit of this goes a long way. Just got a couple of bands, 3. Actually, the lower frequencies aren't getting anything. I still want those kind of centered, but we are just opening up some mids and the upper frequencies there just a little bit. Really just add some air back into it. It fills out your frequency spectrum, makes it sound really good in headphones. Next up, got the vintage limiter. This is just, I've got a sealant on it just to help with those peaks, those transients, and we're in analog here. I just thought it sounded nicer than tube and modern. I feel like modern was a little too harsh and tube was just a little too foggy for me. So the next thing up, this doesn't get added all the time. This is one of those 50-50 things, and I just wanted to put it on here just so you could understand why I use it. And it's really fun to just go through a couple of these and see what it's doing. And I kind of liked what it was doing here. I don't think it's a game changer for this particular master, but it has worked really great on a lot of masters before. And I'm just not that technical with it. I just kind of go through some of these settings. I feel like the print probably gets used more than the lacquer there, and I don't really do much of the DJ. It just sounds a little too clear for me. But I don't know if there's compression on this, but it feels like it kind of smooths things out. And it's not really something that I would initially think that it would do that, but I like it. And we'll listen and kind of go through these settings, let you hear what it's doing. And the last thing up on the mastering chain here is the maximizer, and mostly just for getting that level up, getting that overall sound that we've made, just bringing that up, and of course putting a sealant on it because we don't want that to clip or anything, and we want to keep that tucked in. And then you've got a lot of different modes here. 9 times out of 10, probably go with this IRC4, but the 3 gets used every so often, but it's really going to be this one, and it's going to be either modern or classic. Classic was just a little too, I don't know, unfinished sounding for this particular one, but we'll go through those and see if I change my mind. And then you've got a couple of other settings here that I haven't really fooled with, but just this is just sort of the how quick we're compressing on this, and got it fairly fast because that's what I want, to catch those peaks. So let's kind of go through it. Let's see what it sounds like. I'll play a little bit in the I guess chorus here where it's the loudest, and see what you think.
it should be.
So there you go. Those are a few of the things that I like to use fairly often when mastering. I think that, play around with these and you'll get some good results. And don't forget, when you make a move on one of these plugins or when you add another plugin, just bypass it and then bring it back in and see if it's something that is beneficial to the master, or if it's not, just take it off. If it doesn't immediately give you that, oh, wow, that sounds better, then it probably doesn't. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that this is not, how every master will be. I wanted to use some things that I thought were cool and beneficial, but also, unique. And if you want to add a little something, don't forget about things like this. Like this is, pretty inexpensive over there on Wave's website. And the Ozone package, maybe a little more pricey, but you can do all these. There's other plugins that do these, just like this is a vintage limiter. I'm sure you can find a limiter somewhere, or an exciter, or just a regular old EQ. So keep that in mind. Even the imager there, Waves has one of those too. So keep that in mind when mastering. The main point here is that you're just trying to enhance the overall sound. You're aiming for things that you're already used to hearing on the radio, or that you listen to on playlist, or things like that you can reference. And just keep that in mind and keep the level in mind. Don't be afraid to go louder than minus 14 LUMS. We've got to stop that rumor. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got something out of it. And if you haven't already, I would encourage you to download that start to finish guide on creating a song for commercial release. You can find that in the description box below. And while you're at it, check out the other free guide that I have. If you're just starting out in home studio recording, I've got a home studio gear guide that can help you figure this thing out, and it offers you a lot of recommendations on audio interfaces, microphones, things like that to get you started in recording so that you can put your song ideas down, build production for those, record it, mix it, master it, and get it out for the world to hear. All right, y'all. Thanks so much for watching. We will talk soon.